I'm just grateful to be here and honored to be a part of such an inspiring group. I know when, John, him and I first met back in the fall, well, we had a conversation in the fall, when we got to talking about this community, I was inspired and I was like, I want this guy to talk to our team. So he was gracious enough to drive down to Delaware and speak to us in the middle of January. And then he said, I would really like to hear what you have to say and share. So what an inspiring group. And I think, and I'll talk off, I feed off of people and I kind of talk to the audience instead of really writing down speeches. So when I hear John say all the great things that's happening with Willery and this HR community, I am so excited for you all, because when I started my career as a coach 30 some years ago, mentoring and these types of groups really wasn't a thing. So you just kind of had to go and figure it out. So I'm really, really excited for you all, wherever you are in your career, to be part of such a supportive, inspirational, and meaningful group, and a great leader like John. So thank you again for having me. Again, I'm Stacey Lobell. I'm from Delaware, Ohio. That's where I'm at now. And I'm currently the head women's coach at Ohio Wesleyan University, as was stated. Um, the first thing that I kind of want to share with you, and I'll jump around, I have some slides, but I'll use them as background. If anyone would like my entire presentation, I would be more than happy to send it to Jennifer and whoever else could get that out to you. So what I invite you to do today is really just grab a notepad, a pen or pencil, and if anything jumps out at you that you say, oh, that's speaking to me, or oh, I like that, I want to use that, please just write it down. And I invite you to email me whenever you have time, because I welcome feedback. It's the only way really that I know, hey, this was really good stuff and this is what people care about, or you know what, that wasn't really good stuff. So don't worry about taking notes. If you're a note taker, I will share my entire presentation with you. And I even have some tools that maybe you could use on a daily basis, with some things about finding gaps and weaknesses and how to close those gaps. So just sit back. I hope that I feel like make you feel like you're in the same room with me. I'm used to being in the room with people. So I'm actually standing. So if I move around a little bit, I get a little bit into what I'm saying, because I'm passionate. But um, that being said, grab your pen and paper. And if you have anything, again, that jumps out at you, or that you want to, even in questions, because I don't know how many we'll get to today, please write them down and then you can email me at the end. So I'm going to, am I able to share my screen now?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Let me get this going here. Okay, so when I think about speaking and sharing a message with people, what I always go back to is I just want to help people thrive and not just survive. And that's really what drives me daily with my, women's basketball team. Is I have a group, and I'm honored to have the career that I have, to be a small part of young people's lives from the ages of 18, 17, sometimes when I'm recruiting, all the way through 21, 22. And I really just find that a lot of us are just in survival mode. So when I started doing mental coaching, and I started it with my team because we weren't winning championships, and I was like, why are we not winning championships? We weren't thriving. So that's really what my mantra is and what my vibe is. So hopefully you can take something away from that, and I just want to inspire all of us to thrive and not just be in survival mode. So I share this mural, this picture up here, a collage of a lot of pictures. And really, I'm a visual learner, so that's why I do that. Because when you look at this, I hope you can see different aspects of of me. Again, as they introduced in the introduction, I'm a mom, I'm a wife, I'm a coach. Now I'm a speaker, just grateful to share my message. And this is really what I'm doing. If you would look at my collage at the beginning of my career, I don't think it would look quite like this. And I can tell you I was not thriving. I was simply surviving and trying to figure it out, as we all do. I'm going to skip over this one because that's exactly what Jennifer read at the beginning. This is what I've been gracious to do, and this is my journey along the way. I've done a lot of things, but the bottom line is what I do is I chose a profession to serve other people. And when we serve other people, we, there's so much that it comes around, it comes back to us. And that's really what I do in education. I've taught in the classroom in high school. I've coached college now for 16 years and really have just wanted to share my message and the successes of what I've done up to this point. So before we get started into to really good stuff, I love to start with this quote that says, "The day you plant the seed is not the day you eat the fruit." Um, all of us here on this Zoom, that took the time today because we have growth mindsets and we want to learn. We're all at different places in our journey, and we are all on different journeys. So some of us may just be planting the seed. Some of us may be eating the fruit already, and some of us may be somewhere in the middle where we're like, "What the?" Some days it feels like we're growing and we're going to see that fruit, and some days we're not.
And what the?
So that's the most important thing that I want to remind all of us is hopefully I can touch on all of our journeys at some point as we work through today. I share this with us because this is something that I find the most impactful when I work with my clients one-on-one, whether it's athletes, executives, coaching one-on-one, corporate coaching, culture coaching, anything that I do. Um, Perspective has really changed the way that I view my daily life. And what it has allowed me to do in understanding what perspective is it allows me to find enjoyment even in the worst days that we have. So when I talk about mindset and perspective, it's mindset is how you see yourself, your situation in the world, and your mindset is your perspective. So if we put on a pair of sunglasses, and those of you, maybe you are, sunglass, you have a lot of them like I do. I'm not sure why I have them because 3 or 4 look the same. But if you put them on, you wear them for different reasons, right? If you know, want to feel a little bit, like, oh, these are pretty cool. I want to put these on. You put those on. If I go out on the golf course to watch my son play, I wear polarized because I can see better, when I'm out there. So we put on different sunglasses and that gives us a different perspective. So when we think about our mindset, if we think about what glasses am I looking through at this situation, it allows us to broaden that perspective to be able to understand more. And then it allows us, one, to make better decisions, two, to really realize the reality. And then three, we can actually enjoy it. Even if it's not the outcome we want, when we understand better, we can enjoy more things. So perspective is one of those, the topics that I really like to touch on is just let's shift our perspective a little bit because our perspective creates reality. And here's an example that just popped in my head. I'm sure it was colder up there, so I'm not complaining about weather. But when it was sub-zero degrees a couple weeks ago, even here, we're northwest of Columbus, it was freezing cold. And I'm not a warm weather. I'd rather be in Florida with John. But then the day that it kind of broke and it got up to a whopping 30, I wore a vest instead of my big parka to work. And I'm like, oh, this weather's awesome. And then I look at the temperature on my car and it says 30 degrees. And I was like, wait a minute. Back in the fall, I was complaining about 30-degree weather. And now I think it's hot or warm and nicer because we had sub-zero. So that's just an example of when I think about how many people you hear complain about weather, right? All winter long. And that's what we do. That's part of that self-talk that I'll talk about later. But perspective really does create our reality. Okay. So really my message today is, and I chose this picture, this is our team in a huddle in the locker room before a game. And, when I think about my purpose is to represent, inspire, and lead. It's really, really fun when you share it with like-minded people. So that's really what my message is going to keep coming back to is, when we're in HR, and I am working with a small community bank right now, and I'm they hired me on for a whole year to implement this culture. And I was like, oh, I can do that. And then about 2 months later, I was like, this is a pretty challenging, um, opportunity here. But how can we represent what we really, really, who we are and what our company and what we want to do and ourselves, and then inspire others to be their best. And then let's lead together, whether it starts with self lead or we lead each other. So I like this fun fact that I did when I talked to a group of high school students, the Business Professionals of America. I have the honor of speaking with them monthly. And I was thinking, how can I get their attention? High school students, there's 125 of them. What can I really do? So maybe I'm speaking to you. You're like, okay, lady, get on with this stuff. So maybe you'll learn something today also. When I think about coaching and what I do in my job, I bring young people in, I try to find like minded people. And really, the last thing I spend most of my time on is X's and O's in basketball. The other part is really developing people. And I think that's the most parallel in HR is developing people and how can we inspire others to be their best. And in order to do that, right, we got to grow. So bamboo takes 5 years to grow the root system and it's all underground. So I'm sure most of us have had days where we're like, I am not seeing any change, any growth. I'm not seeing it. And then what do? We get frustrated. We become a little bit disappointed. And then we have to talk ourselves back into, okay, I can do this. I can do this. And then we, have to find another way. After 5 years, the root system is in. Bamboo grows up to 80 feet tall in 6 weeks. So for 5 years, we've been telling ourselves, I don't see anything happening. I don't see anything happening. And then all of a sudden, when it comes to to the surface and we can see it, it grows 80 feet tall in 6 weeks. And in my experience of coaching for 32 years, and then now getting into mindset performance coaching, this is what I see in my one-on-one clients and just, any team members that I work with. It's a stall. There's resistance. There's resentment. I don't know why we're doing this. This isn't going to work. We've had these things before. And then all of a sudden, we just start seeing this growth and everyone becomes positive. Our body language changes. Our language changes with each other. What we are practicing, promoting, permitting starts to change. And then all of a sudden, we have this tall bamboo. And if you know anything about bamboo, when it grows, it's evasive. It just continues to spread. And that's really what culture does. So today, I really want to talk about culture as a flow and remind you that it's ever changing, but it grows whether it's in alignment or not. And I think that's the important thing. Let me say that again. Culture is always present and it's always growing. It's how is it growing? Is it in alignment or is it growing everywhere? And that's what we want to remind ourselves of, when we're talking with people, building relationships, is how is culture a flow? And I've kind of picked this from different things that I've learned and really from my program. How did I get where I was 14 years ago? Because we were not on an 11-game win streak my first 4 years. I can promise you that. And it hurts to talk about it, but you know what? It made us better. We were designing, defining, aligning, and refining. And we're continually doing that. One of the hardest things is when you are winning and you are successful, so in your daily life, maybe it's, everyone's thriving, you're hitting your goals, the company's thriving, a lot of promotions going on, that everyone's excited. Then all of a sudden it's like, what do we do now? Where do we go? How do we keep getting better? So that's the refining part. So even if you're winning, you still must take the time to be intentional and refine where we are and look at that. So before we get into the four aspects of that, let me just define what I call when I say culture. This is what I'm thinking of, and it's as simple as I can get. Because remember, I work with 19-year-olds most days, so you got to make it as simple as possible. There's three levels of culture. Number one is your mind space. And that's your spirit of ownership that you bring daily. From when you get in your car, you drive to work, or if you work from home, you go in your office and you go in your room and you're like, okay, this is what I'm bringing today. You as the person, that's your mind space, your perspective, your mindset. And then your mind space, believe it or not, on days we feel like it doesn't, it impacts your team. And whatever you call team, department, just your coworker if you work, or one person at home, whoever that is, your spirit of ownership 100% impacts the team. So if you learn nothing else today, or you're reminded of something, oh, I'm not making a difference, I'm not impacting, you are impacting. And the question I challenge you to ask yourself is, how do I impact my team? How do I add value? On our team, we play 5 people at a time, and I have 23 people in our program. Now, how can I possibly please 23 people when we only play 5 people at a time? So it's really important that we understand and that we teach everyone adds value every day when you come to practice. And we practice way more than we play games. So again, on a daily basis, think about, what mind space am I bringing? And then how am I impacting my team? And then the fun stuff is, all of these teams we have in companies then influence your community. And this is a great example of the community that we have here. I mean, look what John has started, and look at the team that he has built. And it was all built, from my understanding, from when he spoke to our team, as his story. This is my passion. This is what I want to do. This is what I'm passionate about. And I want to help people. And his spirit of ownership certainly impacts the team. And then us as the team says, well, how can we influence not only our community, but the communities that we work for and we live in, and, just daily. So those are the 3 levels of culture. So I hope that helps. When I talk about culture a little bit, that's what we're talking about. How you impact your team, and your team influences community. All right, I'm going to pause for a second. Does anyone have any questions? Let me check this chat. Have we put anything in there? Because I'm not looking at it.
No questions have come in.
Okay, perfect.
Comments.
All right. If you guys have any questions, you can put those in the chat. And then if you want to interrupt me and interject, I will answer a few questions along the way. All right, everybody, if you need to stand up, you need to wake up a little bit, take a drink, whatever you need to do. It is not my intent to just throw stuff at you, but as a Zoom, it's a little bit challenging to be interactive. So I hope that I've already said something that is speaking to a couple of us so far. So let's talk about designing culture. All right. And I put up there, human resources. How do we design culture? This is really, really what I've learned from working in my first corporate for the entire company. It has 54 employees. And when I came on, I was like, oh, I got this. I coach 23 people, and my staff, we have a staff total, our entire program is 28. I can do this. Well, 54 adults coming from different places in their career is really, really challenging. So when I think about how do we design a culture, because this is basically what I help them do, we started with identifying who has a growth mindset and maybe who doesn't. So the opposite of growth mindset is that fixed mindset. And what we want to do is we really want to make sure we have a growth mindset. Well, we found out real quick, and I did, because I have an assessment that I throw out, and I have them answer some questions. And I'm like, okay, we have a lot of people that don't have a growth mindset here. And we can't just go, you're fired, you're done, you're done, you're fired, you're done. As you know, in human resources, that's not the best answer, even though that's sometimes what we want to do. We really want to find those people that have the growth mindset. So I had about half, roughly. And I'm like, oh, how are we going to do this? So what we started with was, let's talk about building relationships, cultivating that learning, and build skill. But what I've learned through my experience in my teams, and we do this every season, even though we have, freshmen become sophomores, sophomore becomes juniors, etc. And this year we have 5 fifth years and I have 5 seniors. So I have 8 veterans on our team that are like, top of their career, right? We identify core values and we start with that as individuals. And every individual brings their top 2 core values and we write them on the board. And then we identify and we talk through what our team core values are for that entire season. So I don't know in your companies, I don't know if you have company core values, but if you don't, I have really found that is so beneficial. And not only don't put them on a sign, you can put them on a sign, but don't just hang it and then go, okay, we have our core values. Like right now, here's a rhetorical question. You can write it down. You can share it with me later. Do you know the core values of your company? And if we're like, I think I know a few, I think we talk about this a lot, that's where clarity should start. Because I'm going to share a quote from John Glenn here in a minute, but when you don't start with clarity, it's going to be foggy the whole way until you really work through that. So why not start with that clarity? So identify the core values, and then that enhances your recruiting process because then you can find like-minded people. Then you can really, build your training that's going to set people up for success that's in alignment with your core values. Like we all know where we're going, right? So this is something that I want to share that I did with actually the company that I've been speaking about. When I first started working, I threw out the assessment to everyone. I got the results back and I'm like, okay, I asked the CEO who I'm working with, what's the company core values? And they were like, well, we have them. Let me dig them out. Let me see. And I'm like, okay, let's see what these are. So in the middle circle, and I use circles a lot because they're able to connect and overlap. These are the company core values: honesty, integrity, service, trust, community, accountability, teamwork, excellence. Great. Sounds great. Then I look at the assessments that I got back and I'm like, I don't really think accountability is happening right now. I'm not really sure trust is really there. So it tells me so much. And this is another aspect that I've learned in coaching is ask questions. When someone comes in your office, a colleague, an employee, and they want to talk, ask questions. Let them tell you what they feel. If you know how to ask the right questions, you're going to learn so much. So when I found out the core values of the company, I'm like, all right, I started with the leaders. This is what the CEO wanted. I want you to meet with our leaders first. So they have about 12 executives. And I'm like, oh, this is going to be fantastic. I can't wait. Leaders that are, excited and positive. And then I get in this room and I feel the resistance. And I'm like, whoa, this is going to be challenging. So after 3 hours of talking and, me talking some things about culture, we went ahead and we identified our core values. And this is what the team and the department came up with for core values: accountability, trust, ownership, integrity, service, and health. And I was like, okay, that's pretty good. So then we looked at the company core values and I said, all right, do these really overlap? Because once you tell me this, as long as, and I say this all the time, as long as I'm wearing your colors and we have the same letters on the front of our jersey, this is what's going to drive our behaviors daily. We're going to be accountable. We're going to trust each other, even if we don't. That's where faith comes in. We're going to earn trust. We're going to take ownership, right? We're going to do everything with integrity. We're going to be of a service to the community and to each other. And then health is important, which I love, by the way, that they put health as a core value. So then now we have our core values pretty much defined. And then over here, they have the opportunity to include their own personal core values. And then that's where the core values of the team and then the department come in. So I just shared my core values with you. It's loyalty, service, trust, teamwork, and excellence. And I could, you can make a list of 25. It's really challenging to come up with 5 if you really know who you are and you know what your core values are. But so hopefully you get the idea. So here's how I kind of do it. Again, I ask all of our players, I want you to start with 10 core values that are important to you. Narrow those down to 5 and then bring your top 2. So when they bring their top 2, they write them on the board And if I have a group of 23, I don't want 46 core values written on that board. We want to have the least amount because now we know we have like-minded people. This season, we have 23 players. We only had 12 core values on the board when we did that. So that tells me and my assistant, like, hey, we did a pretty good job recruiting, developing these people to, really, really grow with their like-mindedness. So that's an activity that, again, any worksheet or any slide of mine that you see a check mark, I use that as a worksheet, and I would invite you to recreate if you think this would be helpful. But I know this has changed the trajectory of my leadership, because when I know that we have a group of people that have identified our core values, because everyone had a part in the conversation, then we make a logo or a graphic. I have an art major on our team, and she's phenomenal. And she makes these fun graphics that we have. And then we call that our North Star for the entire season. And our North Star guides us because we know what our core values are. So do our behaviors, are they in alignment with what we say we're going to do? So that's one way that we can design the culture. And that's fantastic. And then we're like, okay, we got our core values. This is where most companies stop. They put them on a sign, they create this logo, and then they slap them on the wall, and then nobody talks about them. So now define these things. So when we talk about defining them, I like to look at it like this. Culture is the long game. So look at that field. Every row is perfect, right? And farmers have great machinery now that can allow them to make their rows a little bit neater than they used to be, right? But look at that. It's thriving, it's in alignment. And when you look down at the back of the picture, it looks like it's all going in the same direction. So when we talk about culture in the long game, that's what drives our behaviors and our beliefs that require us to execute the strategy. If you have a B+ culture and an A+ strategy, what grade do you think we're going to get? Probably the B+, right? Because the culture is what drives our behaviors to carry out that strategy. You can have all the great ideas and strategy in the world, but if you don't have the behaviors to back it up, you're probably not going to get that. So what's daily? It's the environment. And the environment, I chose this picture of the 3 little plants because there they are and we see them growing. And then if we continue to be intentional about what we practice, what we promote, and what we permit daily, that sustains the culture that we want in that aligned culture on the previous picture. So when we talk about practice, promote, and permit, I like to really talk about this and give examples. I'm sure you can relate to people in the office. They want to complain. They want to talk about things. How come I didn't get promoted? This person got promoted. What's our incentive here? Why are we doing this? What's this new policy? I mean, I could go on and on that all of you probably deal with being in HR or similar examples. And what culture, aligned culture, provides us is how we talk, how we promote it, and how we practice it. And if we're all doing it very similar, that's where our environment becomes so much more positive, purposeful, and then now we have that aligned culture that we talk about. So when we define it, think about it like this. How's it sound? How's it feel? And what are we allowing? What are we practicing? What are we actually doing? And if you can say, you know what, looks pretty good. Body language looks good. Positive interaction, excitement, engagement. You ask for, hey, can I get your input? People are knocking down the door for that. You have a pretty good culture going on. If there's the opposite of that, lack of engagement, negative body language, complaining all the time, that's not where we want it to be. So just a reminder of what we talk, when I say, when we talk about culture, that's where we have to constantly talk about where are we going, where are we, and how are we doing. We just can't say, oh yeah, everything feels pretty good. Like, continue to ask those questions. And if you are really interested in that, I can give you a whole slew of, these are great questions to ask, which I'm going to get to here toward the end. So the third aspect of culture as a flow is aligning. So culture as a flow with aligning. And here's the quote I referred to earlier. If you miss by an inch on the landing, it's no big deal. If you miss at the start, you miss by 1,000,000 miles. And that's by John Glenn. So we all know what John Glenn did. So imagine if you start and you miss it by a little bit at the start. Where he's going to miss by 1,000,000 miles. But on the landing, it's not really as detriment. So that's why I share when we're designing it, the start point is find your like-minded people and learn, really ask questions. What's important to you? Why are you here? Like, think about the interview questions that we just ask people. That's where I help the HR department of the company I'm working with. We redesigned everything, how they recruit, the questions they ask, how they go about that, to really now the questions are more, it's not job skill related as much as it is, what's important to you? Tell me about an experience where you worked with somebody. How do you build relationships? Those kind of things. So it's the starting point in the recruiting part and finding the like-minded people. So how do we align? Okay, this is another fun tool that I think is really important. And again, this is like a worksheet that you can have or recreate, or, if you think it's helpful. But when we're with companies who say we want to be our best and we want to thrive, right? We want to look for elite performance. And simply elite performance is 1% better. And when John came and spoke to our team, I heard him say this, 1% better. And my players are like, oh, he's saying the same things that coach says every day. 1% better each day. But then I heard John say, and stack them. So I took this from John, so I'm giving him credit. 1% better each day, and stack that 1% every single day when we come on. That anybody can get 1% better. And so as leaders of our departments, in the companies as HR, I would challenge you to really think about and reflect. First of all, when I come in on a daily basis, what is my mind space? What am I going to put as a priority today so I can get 1% better? Because when I get 1% better, now I want to inspire someone else to be 1% better. And then as a company, look how much we grow and improve in one day. So take that 1% and stack that. So this is kind of how we do it with these 3 circles before. First, you ask yourself, like, what's going on right now? What are we looking at? Maybe you're redoing policies. Maybe your team is in a big project, whatever it is. Start backward to the right. What is the desired outcome that we're looking for? Maybe you're working on incentives. Like, we really need to work on incentives in our company. So if that's the desired outcome, what does that look like? And now, what are we currently doing? So now we go back to the beginning. What are our current behaviors right now that we think are going to give us the desired outcomes we want? And then you talk about it. So it gives you purposeful and intentional conversation. I'm sure none of us have been in a meeting where you're like, we're talking about anything but what we need to be talking about right now. That was a worthless meeting. It's not anything that we should have, it took up my time. Anybody ever been there before? Right? So again, current behaviors, and then we say, what do we need to change in order to get this desired outcome that we want? So you use these 3 circles to kind of guide your conversation. And this is just like brainstorming, like, okay, what are we doing here? What's our desired outcomes that we want? What are we currently doing? And then what do we change? And this allows you to go to different levels of leadership and ask the same questions. It's amazing that you're going to get a wide range of answers. Like, well, this is what we do. This is what I do. This is what we're doing. And we're like, are these in alignment with the desired outcomes that we want? So this is a really, really useful tool that I've found to help us stay on track. Like right now, we're going into second round of conference, and we're trying to win our regular season conference, which basically we're a champion but it also gives us a seed that we get a bye in our first round. So what's our desired outcome right now? Because even if we mess up the rest of the season, we've put ourselves in a pretty good place. We still could go to our conference tournament. And if we win 3 games in that conference tournament, we get an automatic bid to the NCAA. So we get to go play again. So we could mess up right in the season and still put it together for 3 games and still have a chance to compete. But we don't want to mess up, obviously. So we continue to say right now, what's our desired outcome that we want tonight? And then we have a game plan, right? So then we watch film on the team, we put a game plan together, and then we execute. Well, hopefully we do. And then we get the desired outcome we want. So this really, I know buzzword, trust the process. This really helps to trust the process. That was the hardest thing for me to learn. I'm like, what do you mean trust the process? Like, if you say you're going to do something, just go do it. But when you really define the process and then you know what your desired outcome is, guess what? You don't have time to worry about all the other distractions, all the other stuff that could get us off path, because we know what we're doing. And that's truly trusting the process. And now you have like-minded people where you might struggle a little bit. And you're like, hey, this isn't working. Go back to that bamboo. Hey, I don't see anything growing here. What are we doing? If you have like-minded people, or what I've learned to come to is even thinking partners, you're going to have really, really purposeful conversation instead of just the negative. So this is a really good tool. I hope that maybe you can see fit somehow and implement into your daily. So what holds us back? Again, pictures. We get stuck, right? This poor little puppy's stuck in the fence. And, think about it. There's a lot of ways to get unstuck. But when you're stuck, you don't really know why. So that's when you have to go back and have those conversations with your thinking partners. A lot of times, groups get stuck because they blame, they complain, and they defend. I did a lot of work with Tim Kite from Focus 3. He's amazing, fabulous. He just passed in the fall, and his company is called Focus 3, and he has amazing stuff. I think John referred to it as well, and so maybe some of you are familiar, but the E plus R equals O. It's the event and the outcome that we cannot control, but we can control our response. So our response, are we blaming? Are we complaining? And are we defending? Again, go back to the weather. It's really easy to complain the whole winter. I hate this weather. It's so cold. And right there, that little self-talk is creating now events for us again to say, okay, I got to get over this. And then we got to move on to the next. If we just wouldn't complain and we wouldn't blame, then we're already moving on to the most important things. So I'm running out of time, I see. So I will move forward with, instead of blaming and complaining, we want resolution and resilience. So when we talk about resolution and resilience, someone comes in our office, they want to unload, they want to complain, they want to defend, let them vent. They're allowed to have emotion. But then how do we redirect them to the resolution and really how to bounce back? That's the most important part of asking those questions. So providing that resolution. And then the final piece of culture as a flow is refine. And this is where we have to do some self-reflecting. What are my core values? Am I following those? Am I self-leading? Am I communicating? This is another worksheet that I give that you just fill in the boxes. And then someone comes up in your office and you're like, oh, I don't really know what I'm doing right now. I don't feel good. Things don't feel good. Hey, why don't we talk about this? Why don't you fill this piece of paper out, bring it back to me, and then let's talk about it. I don't know how you operate in your own departments, but are you a proactive human resource office or are you a reactive? And this is a really great tool to become a proactive resource. And then, of course, we have to take action. So always ask for feedback. And feedback, by the way, is neutral. All it is feedback. And then what you do with it determines whether it's positive or negative. So feedback is neutral. So little tip with maybe asking some questions and words, hey, are you open to some feedback today? That really creates, I've learned, the neutral part of, the conversation. People kind of let their guard down and they're like, sure, give me some feedback. And then we talk about identifying gaps and adjustments. These are the last two worksheets that I can put in my presentation. And again, they're very helpful. I do this a lot when I work with groups and teams where they want to grow and get better. Ask the question, what are the three things that could get in the way of maximizing your ability or our ability? And then once we talk about those, that you're all over the place, get every single person to write it down. And then you kind of collectively put those together. And then we talk about what are our gaps? How do I identify these gaps? So, what actions do we rarely take that we could be? What moments don't we maximize? And then important things left unfulfilled because we occupied ourselves with trivial things. That's my favorite one. How many times do we get caught up in things that really, in the end, are trivial and they don't matter? So this is a worksheet that you can use, on teams. If you're a leader of a team, you can have your team members fill it out. If you want your, department heads and all of your executives to fill it out, whoever it is, everyone has a say and adds value very simply. And then this is feedback. So then you can do whatever you want to with it. And it provides a lot of the gaps and say, okay, how do we close these gaps to be that elite performer that we want to be in our company? Okay, so I'm going to leave you with this and then we'll take any questions or just kind of conclude. Remember that the growth mindset, we want to be that stack of money coins that are growing with those trees and not that rusty old lock that every now and then something sprouts out of it. But you can imagine it probably doesn't do its job. It doesn't lock anything, probably because it can't. And think about how it moves. So we want to be sure that we, one, have a growth mindset and we bring that into from our space every day to impact our team so we can represent, inspire, and lead others to be our best. And that's all I have.
Thank you so much, Stacey.